Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast, podcast number 300. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, January the 14th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. I got an email or text, I forget, from a listener who basically said, "Hey, Strong, I got a suggestion for you for a podcast topic, and part of your fill in the blank you never knew. Musicians, mainly rock stars, that I do a biography of them, pointing out some things that you may or may not have known. Well-known artists, but we talk about some of the less well-known things about them." And he suggested I do one on Dolly Parton. And at first I thought, Dolly Parton, come on, a country star, and she's been in some movies, okay. But I started looking into this just a little bit, and you know what? The listener was right. I started researching Dolly Parton, and her career has been unbelievable. So the topic of today's podcast is the Dolly Parton you never knew. Now, before you roll your eyes as I did, my suggestion is have a listen, because her life has just been truly remarkable. In fact, if you even scratch the country music star part of it, it's still pretty remarkable. And we'll get to that after we get to some of the things that are in the news and some of the things that I've experienced this week. Traveled this week to Western Pennsylvania, and that whole travel thing turned into what could have been a disaster. I left on Monday, came back on Thursday, but in between Monday and Thursday, they had that big FAA computer glitch, and basically it shut down air travel in the whole country. Now that happened on, was it Tuesday night into Wednesday, and I didn't come home until Thursday. So no disruptions on the way to Philadelphia on Monday, and no disruptions on the way home from Philadelphia on Thursday. So for a change, I kind of dodged the bullet and had zero travel problems. The only, I wouldn't say it was a glitch, but it was just interesting. In the Philadelphia airport, which has a large Southwest Airlines presence, that's the airline I flew this week. As I walked into the airport on Thursday afternoon, I saw all the red on the itinerary boards. That, oh, here we go. Lots of cancellations. But as I got closer, I noticed, you know what? There were no cancellations. In fact, there were very few delays. But what they had done is they had changed the gates for more than half of the flights. Now, I don't know what that meant. Maybe this whole disruption, Southwest had to move gates because of the cancellations from the day before, or maybe earlier in that day. I don't know, but very few cancel. In fact, I saw no cancellations in Philadelphia, very few delays, but lots of gate changes. But that's okay, because Southwest flies in the same terminal, and you just walk another 50 feet. Worst case, walk about 500 feet, and you're at your new gate. So basically, no problems. As is the case most of the time, I enjoy listening to local radio stations in the area that I'm at. And one of the stations I was listening to was WBHP in Philadelphia. WPHT in Philadelphia. What is that, 1210 on the AM dial? That's the big, they call it the big talker. It's the big 50,000 watt station in Philadelphia. Think of the KMOX of Philadelphia, okay? And one of the features they had on one of the talk shows was that they have this thing where they play an old song, and you've got to guess the title and the artist. And they played this song, and it sounded really familiar, but I couldn't put a name on it. It's like something out of my very distant past. And in fact, that's exactly what it was. It was something out of my very, very, very distant past. In fact, I will mention the name of the group and the name of the song, and there may be zero people listening to the sound of my voice that remember the song or the group. I take it back. There's probably going to be a handful of them, okay? And the song is 1900 Yesterday, released in 1970, I want to say, by a group called, and by the way, this group could not be, you couldn't even suggest having a group named this. Liz Damon and the Orient Express. Liz Damon was a white gal, and the Orient Express were her all-Asian backup singers, okay? So you couldn't even have a name like that nowadays. That's how bizarre things have gotten. But Liz Damon and the Orient Express had one hit in 1970 called 1900 Yesterday. And it's a kind of a haunting, slow-moving melody, a type of song that they really don't play anymore, except for maybe it would maybe make a theme to a movie, okay, or elevator music, or a music score for a romance or something like that. Okay, that's where you would hear this type of music nowadays, not on the pop charts. But I remember this song was very popular. I think it got up to like number 13 or 14 on the pop chart hits, number 4, I want to say, on the adult contemporary list. But in St. Louis, it was very popular in the early 70s. And in St. Louis, those of you may remember a guy named Harry Gunther, who had a evening radio show on the old 550 KSD AM. And Harry Gunther would play music by the Percy Faith Orchestra, or Henry Mancini, or that type of music, okay? And as a boy, I would listen to that music, and I liked the music, and I liked Harry Gunther because he would tell stories about the artists and their backgrounds, kind of like Jack Carney used to do on KMOX, but not quite to that length. But I remember they played that song a lot. Liz Damon and the Orient Express, 1900 Yesterday. If you're of that age, you got to remember this song came out 53 years ago, okay? Go to YouTube, go to something, and Google it. Liz Damon, Lizdamon, and the Orient Express, 1900 Yesterday. Listen to the song, and you may think, wow, I remember that song. In fact, it's become, that was on Monday I heard this, and that song became an earwig, and I can't get it out of my mind. 6 days later, 5 days later, I still can't get the song out of my mind. So it's interesting. When you listen to local radio, you run across stuff like that to me just puts a big time smile on my face. Part of the country that's not smiling right now. In fact, they never seem to be smiling. It's a place that's it's a magical place, the state of California, but they never seem to be smiling, because what's been in the news for California for over a year now, okay? The drought. It's not enough rain, no water, no snow. So what do they get? They get rain. And what's the big story in California? Oh my gosh, the sky is falling. We're getting too much rain. I think to myself, you got to stop this. And, climate change, okay, I'm not a climate change denier. I'm not a global warming denier. The trend seems to be that the climate is changing somewhat. The fact is the world is getting warmer, okay? That's a fact. Now, the fact that you drive an SUV may or may not be the reason that this has happened, because it's happened before and it's going to happen again, okay? I remember as a boy back in the 70s, back when Liz Damon and the Orient Express were halfway popular, they were talking about we had like a cold snap where it was cold in Missouri for like 2 weeks. I remember for two or 3 weeks straight, we would sled ride. We never have snow for 2 or 3 weeks straight, but was kind of a rare thing, and it never happens now. But the bottom line is, they were saying in the 70s that we were going to have another ice age. Now it's all the ice is going to melt, okay? California's now getting rain. Never in my life can I remember, okay, here's what we get for rain. It's going to drizzle for a few days and everything's going to soak in and everything's going to be perfect. No, you always have too much rain sometimes and not enough rain another time. The main problem with the drought in the state of California, and I've said this before, is there are tens of millions of people living in a desert. Now, I know why they live there, because the weather's beautiful. Why is the weather beautiful? Because it's always warm and it never rains. Think about that. Now the problem is, why it never rains here? Well, of course not. That's why you live here, dummy. Okay? Too much rain in California. And they do have a lot of rain. And things are flooding over there. And people are dying, mainly because they try to cross the flooded street and their car gets washed away. Okay? Just like here in the Midwest. Okay? California people are just as dopey as people in the Midwest. They don't listen to common sense sometimes, and quite often when one doesn't listen to common sense, they improve the gene pool by not being around anymore. I'm going to make a prediction, and remember, you heard this here first. You can't turn on the television or the radio now without hearing about all the rain and flooding in California. Okay, that's all you hear. They have these atmospheric rivers that come through, which, again, this is nothing new. This has happened in California for forever. That's how the mountains get all the snow. In the spring and the summer, the snow melts and they get their water, okay? The atmospheric rivers is how they get tons and tons of snow. Normally, it comes in the form of a little bit of rain across the California, but then when it hits the mountains, all that rain falls, it falls as snow, and life is good. Well, some of that rain is falling as rain before it hits the mountains now. And it is too much, and there is flooding. That's a fact. Here's my prediction, though. By this time next week, so that's going to be, quick, do the math, by January 21st, the big news in California, because it will stop raining by early this week. The rain's going to be done, okay? Say they will have had about 4 or 5 days without rain. The flooding will have stopped, and they're going to say, all this rain? It wasn't enough. We still have drought problems. Don't even think that this rain is going to help the drought at all. The sky is still falling. And the sky will be falling because there's not enough rain. Mark my words, friends. The strong man is true. Before we get into the Dolly Parton You Never Knew, one quick topic, and I'm not going to spend much time on this because it's political. I don't do much on politics now, okay? And the reason being is just I'm not going to say what politics have become. It is what politics have become, but more importantly, it's on how politics are reported. This week, 2 big stories in the news that just caused me to tear my hair out. One on the Democratic side, one on the Republican side. The Republican side has to do with this guy who was newly elected to the U.S. Congress in the state of New York, George Santos. Apparently, everything the guy said is just a lie. Where he got his money, what he did, his ethnicity, it's just a lie. I mean, everything the guy said is a lie. It's like a skit off a Saturday Night Live skit featuring what was his what's the guy's name? He was the liar, the guy who lied all the time. His name escapes me, but it'll come to me. Anyway, the guy just lies for the sake of lying. And everybody's saying they need to throw this guy in prison. I've heard journalists say he needs to be thrown into prison. He needs to be perp walked and thrown into prison. Everybody lies. Unfortunately, it's the truth. What needs to happen is the voters elected this guy, okay? The voters, the people of that district need to get together and say, hey, this guy is a fraud. He's a charlatan. John Lovitz is the guy's name, by the way. He's a fraud. He's a charlatan. He just needs to quit, okay? Not throw him in jail. The fact that the people are going to let him represent them in the U.S. Congress, that's what's deplorable. On the Democratic side, Joe Biden has been found with 2 sets of secret documents that he should have never had, one in an old office and one in his garage next to his Corvette. I was no fan of Donald Trump. I'm still no fan of Donald Trump. I think the guy's a reprehensible human being. However, to say he wasn't treated fairly in the press is being kind. It's the understatement of the year. As I was driving, I was flipping channels going through the mountains. When you're in the mountains, in the Appalachian Mountains, in the Pocono Mountains in western or eastern Pennsylvania, radio stations come and go. You'll have a radio station clear as can be. Then you go down to a valley, it's gone. So you hit the search button, you find another radio station. The scanner stopped on a news station, and they were airing the tail end of President Biden's news conference about the secret documents that were next to his Corvette. He talked about his Corvette. He laughed, tried to make light of it, and says, yeah, if there's a special prosecutor, we will go ahead and cooperate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Said all the right things. Then came the questions and answers from the press. And the very first question, now remember, this is a sitting president who, right now, there's a special prosecutor investigating what Donald Trump did by taking documents out of the White House that he shouldn't have and brought them home. It looks like Biden did the same thing. There's been a special prosecutor appointed by Attorney General Garland. But here was the first question from the press after the news conference by President Biden. Mr. President, how is the First Lady? I understand she had some moles removed from her face. And President Biden's response is, well, she's doing just fine. Thank you very much for your concern, et cetera, et cetera. And then I lost the station because I went behind another mountain. That is total irresponsibility by the press. A sitting president has just raised his hand and said, yep, basically, just like Donald Trump, I took some stuff out of the White House that shouldn't be taken out. And the number one question that the press has is, hey, the First Lady had moles removed from her face. How's she doing? That, my friends, is biased journalism. And when those on the extreme right say that the press is jaded towards the Democrats, that's why they say it. Because as bizarre as that statement is, it's not far from the truth. Okay, let's get into the topic of today's podcast, the Dolly Parton You Never Knew. Dolly Parton, born in 1946, which puts her at 77 years old. I know she's had a lot of plastic surgery, but the old gal looks good for 77, doesn't she? 77, 76, 75? 77, yeah. She looks good for 77, okay? She's a songwriter, singer, actress, philanthropist, businesswoman. Sure, she's a country star, but she's a star in many genres. She started out actually writing songs for other people and made her debut in 1967 with an album called Hello, I'm Dolly, which led to success during the remainder of the 1960s, both as a solo artist and a duet albums with Porter Wagner, if you remember that. In fact, that's how I remember her. My grandparents were big, my paternal grandparents were big country western stars, and they liked Porter Wagner and Dolly Parton. Now, before her sales and chart peak came in the 1970s and continued into the 80s and into the 90s, she was with Porter Wagner. She's sold more than 100 million records worldwide. She's gotten a lot of awards. A Recording Industry Association of America certified gold, platinum, and multi-platinum awards. She's had 25 singles reach number one on the Billboard Country Music Chart. Nobody else has done that but Reba McEntire, for a woman, that is. She had 44 career top 10 country albums. 44! That's a record by anybody. And 110 career charted singles over the past 40 years. 110! She's composed over 3,000 songs. Think about that for a minute. She's written over 3,000 songs, including I Will Always Love You, Jolene, Coat of Many Colors, 9 to 5, and the list goes on and on. As an actress, she starred in films like 9 to 5, The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, Steel Magnolias, Rhinestone, Straight Talk, Joyful Noise, among others. She's received 11 Grammy Awards, 11, 50 nominations, including a Lifetime Achievement Award, 10 Country Music Association awards, including the Entertainer of the Year, and she's only one of 7 female artists to win the Country Music Association's Entertainer of the Year Award, 5 Academy of Country Music Awards, including Entertainer of the Year, 4 People Choice Awards, 3 American Music Awards, and she's received at least 1 nomination from the Academy Awards, the Grammy Awards, the Tony Awards, and the Emmy Awards. She's won or been nominated by just about every organization in the country. Now, outside of her work in the music industry, she co-owns the Dollywood Company, which manages a number of entertainment venues like the Dollywood Theme Park, Splash Country Park, the Dolly Parton Stampede, and Pirates Voyage, and that list goes on and on. And many of those are in western Tennessee, where she grew up, very poor. In fact, she grew up in Little Pigeon River, Tennessee, the 4th of 12 children. She's always said that she grew up dirt poor. Example, her father paid a doctor, Dr. Robert Thomas, with a sack of cornmeal for delivering her. Hey, you delivered my baby girl? Here's a sack of cornmeal. You can't make that stuff up. But very talented as well. She started playing the guitar at age 7, a guitar somebody at home made for her. When she was 8, her uncle bought her first real guitar. She was performing as a child. By 10, she appeared on the local radio station in Knoxville. By 13, she was recording a single called Puppy Love on a small Louisiana label called Gold Brand Records. She appeared on the Grand Ole Opry, where she first met Johnny Cash, of all people. Johnny Cash was the one that encouraged her to follow her own instincts during her recording career. In other words, do it your own way, sweetheart, and she did. Her initial success came as a songwriter. Her songs were recorded by Kitty Wells and Hank Williams Jr. In 1967, Porter Wagoner invited her to join his weekly syndicated television show, The Porter Wagoner Show. And again, I remember watching that show as a boy at my grandparents' house on Saturdays. By 1970, she started recording solo. In 1974, her song, I Will Always Love You, written about her professional break from Porter Wagoner, went to number 1 on the country chart. Here's an interesting story that I never knew. About the same time, because a lot of people have recorded I Will Always Love You. Elvis, Whitney Houston, et cetera, et cetera. And, of course, the writer gets the royalties every time somebody writes that song. Now, Elvis Presley said, hey, I want to record that song. And Dolly Parton was interested. I mean, why wouldn't he be? The king of rock and roll wants to go ahead and record a song that you wrote? Of course. But she lost interest because Colonel Tom Parker told her, and you could just see him doing this, the sleazy guy that he was. He told her, you know what? It's standard procedure for the songwriter to sign over half the publishing rights to any song recorded by Elvis. And Parton said, no, I'm not going to do that. That decision has made her millions in royalties from the song over the years. The Whitney Houston cover, Parton got paid big time on that. The Elvis cover, she got paid big time on that. When anybody covers that song or any of the songs she wrote, Dolly Parton gets paid. Colonel Tom Parker wanted that money, and Dolly Parton said, sorry, Charlie, take a walk. Now, Parton's first attempt at a crossover career away from country music into pop didn't stick, but then she got smart. She turned to a high-profile pop producer named Gary Klein for her next album. The result, in 1977, she recorded an album called Here You Come Again. And that title track became her first million seller. The album became her first million seller, topping the country album chart and reaching number 20 on the pop chart. Now, the title track and the second single off that album, Two Doors Down, topped the country chart and crossed over to the pop 20 chart as well. For the remainder of the 70s and into the early 80s, many of her subsequent singles moved on to both charts simultaneously. Her albums during that period were developed specifically for pop crossover success. So she lost the twang and made more money. In 1978, Parton won a Grammy Award for Best Female Country Vocal Performance with her Here You Come Again album. She continued to have hits with Heartbreaker, Baby I'm Burning, You're the Only One, all of which charted in the the Pop Top 40, and topped the country charts as well. Parton served as one of 3 co-hosts, along with Roy Clark and Glenn Campbell, on the CBS special 50 Years of Country Music. In 1979, Parton hosted the NBC special The 70s, An Explosion of Country Music. So she's starting to cross over from country to pop to television. Then came 1980, the theme song from a movie called 9 to 5. Which starred Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin. Not only did that song reach number 1 on the country chart, in February 1981, it reached number 1 on the pop and adult contemporary charts, giving her a triple number 1 hit. Parton became one of the few female singers to have a number 1 single in the country and pop chart simultaneously, along with adult contemporary. She also received a nomination for an Academy Award for the Best Original Song. Her duet with Kenny Rogers, Island in the Stream, which was written by the Bee Gees and produced by Barry Gibb, spent 2 weeks at number 1 in 1983. In the mid-'80s, her record sales were still relatively strong. She recorded I Will Always Love You in 1995 with Vince Gill, so she cashed in on that song once again and made more money on that song once again. The next year, in 1996, Treasures, that's an album that covered songs from the 60s and 70s, was released and featured a diverse collection of material. Mac Davis, Pete Seeger, Chris Christopherson, Cat Stevens, Neil Young. She recorded songs by all those people. In fact, her recording of Stevens' Peace Train was later remixed and released as a dance single, reaching Billboard's Dance Singles chart. So I think she hit just about every genre known to man. Parton earned her second Academy Award nomination for Best Original Song for Travelin' Through, which she wrote specifically for the feature film Transamerica. In the fall of 2016, she released Jolene as a single with the a cappella group Pentatonics and performed on The Voice with Pentatonics and Miley Cyrus. That was again in 2016. In 2017, she co-wrote and featured vocals on her song Rainbow with Younger Now. That's the name of a group, folks. And that was the 6th album by her goddaughter, Miley Cyrus. So she's crossing into the new stuff by the late teens. In August 2020, Parton announced plans to release her first holiday album in 30 years, A Dolly Christmas. That was in October. On December 6th, CBS aired a special, A Holly Dolly Christmas. She performed that album. In 2022, Parton stated in an interview that she would no longer tour, but would continue to play live shows occasionally. People freaked out. She's no longer going to tour. She's 77. Come on. If you're 77, are you still working? Are you still touring? Think about it. Now getting down to the obvious about Dolly Parton. The thing about Dolly Parton that every man thinks about. That's right. The way she looks. Her physical attributes. And of course, who tried to cash in on that? Everybody. Who especially tried to cash in on that? Playboy magazine. They offered her to pose nude for Playboy several times, but of course she turned them down. However, she did appear on the cover of the October 1978 issue wearing a Playboy bunny outfit complete with ears. Now, the association of breasts with Parton's public image is illustrated in the naming of Dolly the sheep, since the sheep was cloned from a cell taken from an adult sheep's mammary gland. Now, in Mobile, Alabama, the General W.K. Wilson Bridge is commonly called the Dolly Parton Bridge due to its 2 arches representing her bust, or resembling her bust, I should say. The thickened appearance of the turret frontal armor of the T-72A main battle tank is unofficially named Dolly Parton. Now, they revised the tank. The T-72BI, which is a bigger and better version, is called the Super Dolly Parton. That's a nickname. Now, how does she look that way? Birth. How does she still look that way? Plastic surgery. In fact, she's known for undergoing considerable plastic surgeries. In fact, on a 2003 episode of the Oprah Winfrey Show, Winfrey asked, "What kind of cosmetic surgery have you undergone?" And Parton replied that cosmetic surgery was imperative for keeping with her famous image. Parton has repeatedly joked that her physical image and surgeries about them, saying, "Look, it takes a lot of money to look this cheap." When asked about future plastic surgeries, she famously said, "If I see something sagging, bagging, or dragging, I get it nipped, tucked, or sucked. And, that's the main reason she's never been criticized about this, because she doesn't get uptight about it. She just jokes about it. So if somebody's laughing at her and making fun of her for looking the way she does and having the plastic surgery she does, she just laughs along with them. And basically, the haters are short-circuited. So they have no argument, and she comes out smelling like a rose. Now, she can't read music. And you think to yourself, well, how could she be a musician and not read music? Well, guess what? Although she's unable to read music, like Frank Sinatra, that's right, the golden voice, the arguably best singer in the history of the world, he can't read sheet music either. But Parton can play many instruments, including the dulcimer, the auto harp, the banjo, the guitar, the electric guitar, the fiddle, the piano, the recorder, and the saxophone. Now, in 1998, Nashville Business ranked her as the wealthiest country music star. As of 2017, her net worth was estimated at $500 million, $500 million. Now, what is it today? What is that, 5 years later? $650 million. So in the past 5 years, so between the ages of 72 and 75, Dolly Parton made another $150 million. Not bad. What does she do with her money? Well, she invested much of her earnings into business ventures in her native Tennessee, most notably her native Pigeon Forge. She's the co-owner of the Dollywood Company, which operates theme parks called Dollywood, a dinner theater, the Dolly Parton Stampede, the water park Dollywood Splash Country, and Dream More Resort and Spa. These are all in Pigeon Forge, which has done a lot for the economy. Dollywood is the 24th most visited theme park in the U.S., 3 million visitors a year. The Dolly Parton Stampede business has ventures in Branson, Missouri, and Myrtle Beach, South Carolina as well. Parton was co-owner of Sand Dollar Productions, a film and television company. What did they do? They did a TV show called Babes, which I never heard of. But they also did Buffy the Vampire Slayer and The Father of the Bride, The Father of the Bride 2, Straight Talk, and the remake of Sabrina in 1995. In 2015, she announced her new production company, which we call Dixie Pixie Productions, and produced Movies of the Week in development with NBC Television. So she's big into production too. In her first feature film, Parton portrayed a secretary of the leading role with Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin in 9 to 5. She received nominations for a Golden Globe Award for the Best Actress and a Golden Globe Award for the New Star of the Year. In late 19, say that twice strong. In late 1981, Parton began her second film, a musical called The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. The film earned her second nomination for a Golden Globe Award for Best Actress. So 2 movies, 2 Golden Globe Award nominations. Not bad for somebody who's never acted before. The film was greeted with positive critical reviews and became a commercial success, earning $69 million worldwide. After a 2-year hiatus from films, Parton teamed up with Sylvester Stallone in Rhinestone. In 1989, Parton returned to film, acting in Steel Magnolias. She did a Smoky Mountain Christmas in 86, Wild Texas Wind in 91, Unlikely Angel, Blue Songbird, and she also starred with James Woods in the movie called Straight Talk in 1992. Lots of other guest appearances on lots of shows, lots of voiceover work as well. Dolly Parton's Coat of Many Colors, a made-for-TV film based on Parton's song of the same name, aired in November of 2016. In 2018, Parton produced and co-starred Dolly Parton's Heartstrings and that filmed in November 2019. In 1966, backing up to her personal life, she got married to a guy named Carl Thomas Dean. Now, Dean's retired. His wife is still working, so it's a good gig if you can get it. But he ran an asphalt company. You never heard of the guy? He didn't want to be heard of. And he ran an asphalt company in Nashville. Did he have to do that? No. His wife made hundreds of millions of dollars. But that's what he wanted to do. And you don't hear about him because he's always shunned publicity and rarely accompanies his wife to any events. Now, she's also said in interviews that although it appears they spend little time together, it's simply that nobody sees them publicly. They like it that way. In fact, Parton said, "We're really very proud of our marriage. It's the first for both of us, and it's the last for both of us." Folks, they've been married for 57 years. And all you haters out there who think, well, she can't be married to that dope. She's probably screwing around on him and on the road. You know how the press is. There's never been a story about Dolly Parton stepping out on her husband or vice versa. And I don't count the National Enquirer or the Star or the Sun, because those are the same ones that have Wolf Boy and Bat Boy on them, okay? That's just made up stuff. I'm talking about real live gossip column press. Nobody has ever said anything. And wouldn't you think that in 57 years, if there was smoke or if there was fire, there'd be smoke? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No scandal, no stories, no nothing. Now, since the mid-1980s, Parton has supported many charitable efforts. The gal made all kinds of money, and she spreads it around. Her number one goal is in the area of literacy, primarily through the Dollywood Foundation. Her literacy program, that's a part of the Dollywood Foundation, mails one book per month to each child enrolled from the time of their birth until they enter kindergarten. Currently, over 1,600 local communities provide the Imagination Library to almost 850,000 children, almost 1 million children each month across the U.S., Canada, the U.K., Australia, and Republic of Ireland. Basically, all the main English-speaking countries of the world. In 2018, Parton was honored by the Library of Congress on account of the charity sending out its 100 millionth book. 100 million books she sent out to underprivileged children. The old adage, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Give a man a fishing pole, he eats for life. Teach a child to read, and they can fend for themselves. The Dollywood Foundation, funded by Parton's profits, has also been noted for bringing jobs and tax revenue to depressed areas, especially Pigeon Forge. In 2006, Parton pledged $500,000 to a hospital in Sevierville, Tennessee, named for Robert F. Thomas, the physician who delivered her. She also announced a benefit concert to raise additional funds for the project. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, she just didn't run her mouth like many celebrities did. She donated $1 million towards research at Vanderbilt University Medical Center and encouraged those who could afford it to do the same. She's been one of the most honored performers of all time. She's earned 11 Grammy Awards, a total of 50 Grammy Award nominations. 50. The second most nominations by any female artist of that award. At the American Music Awards, she won 3 awards out of 18 nominations. Country Music Association, she's won 10 awards out of 42 nominations. The Academy of Country Music, 39 nominations, 7 awards. She's one of only 6 female artists to win the Country Music Association's highest honor. We talked about that earlier, the Entertainer of the Year. She's also been nominated for 2 Academy Awards and a Tony Award. She was nominated for an Academy Award in her appearance in the 1978 Cher television special. She was awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for her music back in 1984. She was introduced in 1986 to the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. That's not performing, that's songwriting. She turned down the Presidential Medal of Freedom twice due to her husband's illness and the ongoing pandemic. So apparently her husband got sick, and she said, "No, I want to stay home with my husband. I don't want to get this award. I need to be with him." In response to a 2021 proposal by the Tennessee legislature to erect a statue of Dolly Parton, she released a statement giving the legislature, asking the legislature to remove the bill from consideration. She said, I quote, "Given all that's going on in the world, I don't think putting me on a pedestal is appropriate at this time." In the most recent, I don't want to say act of modesty, I'll just say. Okay, in 2022, she was nominated for induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And what does she say? Look, I'm going to decline this nomination because I'm not a rock and roll person. This is for rock and roll people. But then after being told, look at all the people in the Rock and Roll Hall. In fact, I would say many, if not most of the people in Rock and Roll Hall of Fame aren't rock and roll people. In fact, it's not really named correctly. It's for music people. After learning that, she said, sure, I'll accept the nomination if I'm chosen for the honor. And she was elected into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on November 5th, 2022. What a life. And what a business person, too. Because you think a lot of people have had success on many avenues. Songwriter, performer alone and with a duet, actress, host, business person, etc., etc., etc. You name it, she's done it. But of all these things, the most incredible part about Dolly Parton, in my opinion, is the lack of scandal. You never hear anybody say, well, yeah, I used to work with her and she's just a total bitch to work with. Nobody says that. Nobody says that. Nobody says anything but good things about Dolly Parton. Everybody loves to work with her. She's modest. The people that try to poke fun at her poke fun at the way she looks. And she laughs with them. And she just totally disarms them. And she's 77 years old, still working a lot. And she gives a ton of that money away to causes, real causes. Literacy in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, that's a big deal, okay? She saw that growing up. And she decided, you know what? I've got tons of money now. Let me go ahead and contribute this. And millions of books she's donated. 100 million books she's donated. That's unbelievable, okay? And that's the story of Dolly Parton. The Dolly Parton you never knew. Yeah, you knew about 9 to 5. Yeah, you knew about the big boobs. Yeah, you probably knew about Porter Wagner. You knew about Dollywood, but did you know about all the rest? And that makes this type of topic on the podcast the one that makes me smile the worst. Makes me smile the most. These other stories, the politics, the California flood, not so much. There's enough ugliness in this world, isn't there? It's best to concentrate on that stuff that makes you smile. And doing this research on Dolly Parton certainly made me smile. And I hope it made you smile as well. That's it. We're done. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's the email address. Send me your email address. I will send you a link to the podcast upon publication. You can download it and listen to it at your leisure. How do you listen to the James Strong Show? Facebook. You can listen to it there. You can listen to it on iHeartRadio. You can listen to it on Spotify, Spreaker.com, or Brad Hildebrand's Podcaster, PODCASTRR. Give it a try. I'm there. Others are there as well. It's a radio station that does podcasts. Podcaster, PODCASTRR.com. That's it. We're done. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.